Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It's that time of week again. Everybody's favorite segment, the NFL Power Rankings. Guys, we are heading into week 14. The New England Patriots facing off against the Pittsburgh Steelers to kick things off. We're going to go over all the games from the past week, talk about what teams are playing, kind of talk about the playoff picture, the rankings, etc. The bottom row, obviously, teams completely out of it. The top maybe 3 or 4 rows are all teams with playoff hopes still intact. Before we jump into it, smash that subscribe button. We are 5 away from 800. If you are not subscribed, please do me a favor. Help us get to 800, and I'll be a happy camper. What can I say? Number 32, we're going to kick things off, and this team is playing on Thursday night. First time in the bottom of the rankings this past week was just a staple of how this season has gone for the New England Patriots, losing 6-0 to the Chargers, playing the Steelers this week. Maybe have a chance at a win here this week because the Steelers have their own problems going on. We'll get to them in a little bit. But the Patriots had to move them into last place because really, number 31, Carolina Panthers, I think if they faced off, the Patriots would lose. So I had to make that adjustment. And Carolina had a pretty okay week, losing by 3 to Tampa Bay, 21-18. They do have a division rival in the New Orleans Saints coming up, another opportunity. They've just looked a little bit better than the Patriots, kind of pulling these guys both in together. Of course, the Patriots do have one more win over than the Panthers, but like I said, if these two guys played, I would probably lean Carolina. I do think their offense maybe has a little bit going. Rather have Young at quarterback than anyone on the Patriots right now. It's just been an awful season. If you've been watching football as long as I have we really seen Belichick struggle this much with a team? I don't think so, and the future is not bright in New England, and probably you can say the same for Carolina. Both these teams pretty interchangeable on most people's power rankings, so there is that. Number 30, same spot as last week. This bottom row hasn't really changed too much from the prior week because I think most teams were either on a bye or they lost. Washington, no different. They lost 45-15 against the Miami Dolphins. Dolphins seem to steamroll any team that does not have a strong defense, especially at the corners. Washington just getting lit up along the way. We didn't really expect them to win this week, as of course. They go into this next week. They do have a bye. They have a little bit of extra time to rest. I don't know what they're really resting for. The season's over for the Washington Commanders. They're going to be looking forward. They're trying to make some progress. I don't see it. This division is pretty much the tale of two different sides of teams. You're either at the very top or you're at the very bottom, and number 29 is in that same division. We do have the New York Giants. Interesting situation with the Giants coming off a bye. They have even longer rest because they're not playing till Monday, and Monday has 2 games starting at the same time. Giants versus Green Bay, and we have Dolphins versus Titans. But Giants haven't really got much going, but they had a couple of wins going into their bye week. DeVito, maybe the answer. We all know he's not, but he's at least given the Giants some wins. So mind you, they're playing the Patriots. They're playing the Commanders, 2 teams below them on the power rankings. Now they're going to be playing a team like Green Bay, who is probably one of the hottest teams. We'll talk about them in a minute, but one of the hottest teams in the NFL. We expect a pretty big dud, at least I do, even though it's a primetime game. Number 28, we got the Chicago Bears. No movement for them. Bye week that they just had, and they do have that division rival coming up with the Detroit Lions. Put up a big fight, a really good fight against the Lions last time. Somehow made a game of it. Had the lead, I think, for that game for 3 quarters. They just had so many turnovers for Goff, so I don't really expect it to go that way again. Don't think Fields was playing that time. I think he was still recovering. But either way, Chicago, we know where they are. Number 27, a 4-win team with the New York Jets. Just an interesting week. 13-8 loss to the Atlanta Falcons, and then this week coming up, they do have their own matchup here against Houston, another team that I think is in a situation where they're at least a playoff team fighting. They're going to be playing all their hearts out. Whereas on the other side of it, the Jets just can't get any offense going. Think there's talk that they might be going back to Zach Wilson. Wow, big surprise. They haven't been able to sort out the quarterback situation. But guys, imagine if they had Aaron Rodgers. This would have been a completely different Jets team. And honestly, that's why I do put them a little bit up on the board. They probably can lose to any one of these teams, but Aaron Rodgers factor, I don't know where this team would be with him in there, but I can't imagine them being any worse than they are. They probably are at least middle of the board. So I'm sad we're not going to see it. Maybe we see him come back, but at this point, they're pretty much out of the playoffs, so they'll probably rest them the rest of the year. So Jets, I think, are pretty secured in that spot. Number 26, one of two teams going into a bye. Arizona had a big win, 24-10. Since Kyler Murray has come back, they've worked their way up the board. I don't know if he is the it factor enough to move them further up the board yet. I want to see a little bit more action. Sure, they beat 24-10 against the Steelers. They took Pickett out of the game, really exposing the Steelers' offense. And without Pickett, it's a big question mark for the Steelers. So with Arizona, we want to see it. They're going to have a bye week. The next game they play is going to be really impactful because from this point moving forward, it's pretty tight and some pretty bad teams that if one team starts to shine, they can really move themselves up the board. I think Arizona is a potential contender for that. Number 25, Tennessee Titans having that tight, close game against the Indianapolis Colts this past weekend, 31-28. They just couldn't put them away. They had the lead at certain times. They blew it. Indy just seems to get the offense going at times. And now they're going to have Monday night against the Dolphins. I don't expect them to really go much further than that. They are now 4-8 on the year, potentially about to be 4-9. This will be one of the worst seasons for Tennessee since I can remember. Ever since Tannehill really moved over there, they've had a winning team. They've won the division past couple of years, right? So Tennessee falling back, there's probably going to start figuring out what rebuild's going to look like. They're still quite competitive, keeping a lot of teams in it. Their offense, still got Derrick Henry. They've got Hopkins. They got the weapons, but they're just missing something, probably a quarterback, probably some defense, giving up 31 to Indy this past week. Number 24, I think I moved them down a couple of spots on the board. Even though they were off this past week, just kind of started to look at the teams that were behind them on the board. I still don't know if they match up super well. They got a big question mark at the quarterbacks. Sure, he's a rookie. He's going to try to figure it out. It's looked good so far since the coaching firings have had it. Had a bye week now. This is their chance to really prove me wrong. I just don't have the confidence in them as of yet. So 24, I think, is the right spot for them. 23, a team that really I had confidence in for a long time, and it just keeps slipping away further and further. And they played Detroit this past week. The score looks a little bit better than it actually was. I think it ended 33-28. But guys, they were blown out. I think they were down 3 touchdowns, 21-0 even at one point. Just getting blown out most of the way. Never really led this game. And it's kind of been a story. Like, their defense was supposed to be the big highlight for me, at least, on this team. They've given up 30 points. Of course, Detroit's top offense, but it's not doing it right. And they're right here, 23. Lucky for them, they have Carolina this week. They can maybe pick up another win. The division leader, Atlanta Falcons, are 6-6, and Tampa Bay's ahead of them, and they're playing each other. So realistically, at 23 on the power rankings board, they have a shot at the playoffs. So that's why I was kind of prefacing at the beginning of this video. Number 22, I think they have that bye, right? But I moved them down a couple of spots. They are playing the Las Vegas Raiders. I do think they're the better team, and I want to see them come out of this bye week that they're just had and really show that, okay, it's been a little bit of struggles over the past couple of weeks, but we're going to try to make a shot at the playoffs, and that's what this week's really going to be about. This week is going to be a situation where teams, this is their last-ditch effort. We got 5 games left for most teams. That's one of them. Number 21, we have a division leader at number 21 on the power rankings board. This is just outrageous to me. They're not even the top rank in the division on the board, which just goes to show, but we got them 21. Somehow they beat the Jets this past week. It's a game where they very well could have lost. They have not put up a lot of points. They've looked pretty ugly, but their defense at least has been holding them in the tight games. In the very tight games, they somehow have been winning along the way. So playing Tampa Bay this week, that if they lose that one, they will be tied in terms of record. I don't know where they sit on the tiebreaker. I know they beat Tampa Bay in the first game. They played each other 16-13. But guys, I don't think Atlanta's as good as Tampa Bay, so I just have them a little bit lower. Number 20, I think this is possibly the furthest dropping a team has ever done on this board while winning a game. 6-0 win over the New England Patriots, but it was just absolutely super ugly of a game. Very few times there were chances they could have even lost this game. Chargers it's been a while. People in the comments have been telling me I've had them too high. I kept waiting. I kept thinking that this team was going to pull it together, and they just have not pulled anything together. I guess the one highlight of this past week, they did shut out the Patriots. The defense did get a big shutout. But I am concerned that they're not going to be able to do it. Big test this week. Maybe I'll eat my own words. They're playing Denver this week, a team that I've moved up the board pretty rapidly over the past couple of weeks, a division matchup, and one where maybe I'll eat my words. They'll come out and show somehow that they're competitive. But right now, I don't see it in the Chargers, and that's why I put them there. Number 19, talked a little bit about them when we were talking about Atlanta. Tampa Bay Bucks coming off a win over the Carolina Panthers. They pretty much led the whole way. The score is pretty close. They only won by 3. But I don't really think it was in jeopardy. They're one game behind Atlanta right now. They're playing Atlanta this week, and that is going to be the big decider here. I think if Tampa Bay is going to be the best team in this division, which I think they are, but they have to prove it in the games, and this week is going to be their chance to do it. Number 18, we got the Cincinnati Bengals. Monday night game, just absolutely insane. I don't think anybody predicted them to be able to put up 30-plus points against the Jacksonville Jaguars, but they somehow managed to create that upset. Sure, Lawrence got injured during that game. Sure, there's a lot of other issues in that game, but they're at least sticking around. I don't really suspect, and I think most people don't suspect them to be a playoff team now without Burrow at the quarterback spot. But if they can put up 30 against Jacksonville, maybe they can creep their way back into the playoff conversation. There's just a lot of teams ahead of them that I have a little bit more faith in. I don't know if I should have too much more faith in the Steelers. Like I talked about already, they come off that disappointing loss against Arizona. I think if Pickett can stay in that game, it's a different story, and the Steelers can squeak out a possible win against a team that I think they really expected to win there. The defense continues to shut teams down below 20 points all season long. Teams have just had a ton of difficulty with that. I think with them, if we see Trubisky this week, I didn't check the status of Pickett, but I was pretty sure he was out at least for a couple of weeks. New England this Thursday. It's a Thursday game, short week. Maybe advantaged Belichick, but we also got to give Mike Tomlin a ton of credit. This guy is most likely one of the best coaches in the NFL. This is going to be an interesting game. We got two possibly terrible teams, and this is Steelers trying to hold on for their chances of that 9 wins, because if they can hit the 9-win mark, I think that's enough to sneak them into the playoffs. Number 16, just an interesting team. They get absolutely blown out, 36-19 against the Rams. And this upcoming week, they're playing Jacksonville. They're praying that Lawrence doesn't start. There's a lot of rumors that he's going to make it. It's only a high ankle sprain. But Cleveland has a lot of other things to worry about. They got Joe Flacco starting at quarterback. Absolutely crazy to me that this guy is starting in the AFC North for a team that isn't the Ravens. But the Browns, they just want to put something out there. They've upset the 49ers, they upset the Baltimore Ravens, I think, earlier in the season, and then they lose to other teams along the way. It's just such a wild team. Haven't been able to put out a quarterback whatsoever with any consistency. I think right now they are sitting in 7th, so technically holding on to that last playoff spot. But I have some teams ahead of them on the board that I don't know are ahead of them in standings-wise, because I think they're just not as good as some of those teams. Number 15, fighting for the playoff spot. This team has just been absolutely on fire, and we saw it this past Monday. Or was it Sunday? It was the Sunday night game where they upset the Kansas City Chiefs. They pretty much led the whole way this game, and their defense stepped up. Their offense took care of the ball. Possession was a big part of this game, and I think the first quarter, that each team only had 1 possession, and I think even in the second quarter, that might be pretty close to true. There was a very limited possessions, and Green Bay really took care of the ball here. They're playing some playoff-style football. And we're seeing the evolution of Jordan Love right before our eyes with the weapons. He's got Watson, he's got Dobbs. Like, it's coming together, and it's just pretty exciting because like Green Bay, as far as I can remember, has had a good quarterback, and it seems to be working out for them. Whatever they do, they just don't want to break it because it's been working for them. Number 14, moving them up the board because as they get healthy, they start to get more and more dangerous. Number 14, we got the LA Rams. Guys, I really think this team might make it into the playoffs. They're in a situation where they got some veterans. They got a defense that seems to get it done, and they're starting to put up some points. I think they might do it. Number 14, we got the Rams, and they had that big win. But it's this week. This week is one that is going to be super important for them. Baltimore. Like, Baltimore coming off a bye. They have a ton of momentum. I really expect it to kind of stop this week for the Rams. But if they can have a win here, we're going to see it. Because I think when we start to look at the board here, between even like 20 and like 10, like it's pretty packed in terms of standings, in terms of team skill. It's going to be whatever team can get hot for these last 5 games of the season. It's going to be super important. Number 13, holding on somehow into this playoff race because the Indianapolis Colts and Gardner Minshew continues to get this team's offense points, and they win that one 31-28 against the Titans. Division matchup, a team that's 4-8 now, but Indy seems to be taking care of business against the worst teams, and they even somehow pick up some upsets along the way. Indy has fought their way into this conversation. I think slowly but surely every week they have been moving up the standings board here. They have Cincinnati this week. So unlike Jacksonville, they got to take advantage of a team that is kind of down and out in the quarterback situation. It's a pretty good matchup. Both these teams have a shot. I think it's going to be interesting how that goes. Number 12. Believe it or not, we have the 12 at number 12. That's pretty ironic. But Seattle coming off a loss. We're not going to hold too much against them. Dallas put up 40 points against them. They kept it somewhat close, putting up a lot of points themselves. Got to be pretty excited. It's a very exciting game going back and forth with offense. I think, no punts in this game whatsoever. Absolutely crazy. One concern I was having with Seattle was their offense. So to see that come up alive a little bit, I did give them a little bit of credit, playing a top 5 team on the board all season long. Seattle still very much in that playoff hunt. They're going to see the Rams, and it's going to be super important. They're playing the 49ers this week. So like I said, the Rams playing the Ravens, the Seahawks playing the 49ers. If one of those teams can pull out a win, it's going to make a big, big difference in this playoff race. Number 11, we got the Buffalo Bills. Much, much needed bye for them this past week. They needed it. It's been an awful season for the Bills, but they can still salvage it. I think technically they're in 10th overall in the entire AFC if we just go strictly off playoff record and like playoff seeding and whatever. They have Kansas City this week, another true test, and they talk about it every week. The Bills have the toughest schedule in the NFL to close things out. So it's very likely they're going to miss the playoffs. Doesn't mean they're not a top 11 team in the NFL. It's just been a really rough ride. And I think, honestly, do not be shocked if they pull the upset this week. Number 10, moving in the same spot as last week. There's no adjustment. I think I talked about it last week. They played Houston. They were right beside each other. Houston was at number 9. It was really going to decide whose momentum was stopping and whose was pretty much staying where it is. Starting to talk about teams, in my opinion, now that are like locks for playoffs. Maybe not locks, but like strong playoff seeding. Denver, sure, they're a little bit out. They had that 5-game win streak. Now they lost. How do they rebound from that? It's going to be super interesting. We talked about it. They're playing the Chargers this week. This is their chance. This is their chance to show that they're truly a playoff team. That win streak was not a fluke. They're against a team that has struggled all season long and doesn't show a lot of hope in their offense, in their defense. So this is their chance. Denver holding on to number 10. A loss would really set their playoff chances back, etc. Number 9, I got the Jaguars. That loss of Cincy was really disappointing. I think for the most part, a lot of this weight goes into Lawrence. High ankle sprain. They're talking about him coming back this Sunday. They're playing the Browns. But I'm concerned. I don't want them to rush him back. They might do that, and that could be disastrous. With the top 10 being so tight and these teams up here being really strong, I'm a little worried whether they can do it. And that game against Cincinnati gave me room for pause on the Jags. Maybe I'm making a mistake. But number 8, I do have the Houston Texans. And when we're looking at the overall standings, I've talked about this, I think the Texans are technically 8th so in the AFC. So that wouldn't mean they're a playoff team just yet, but I expect them to go in, beat the Jets this week, and then they'll be in technically playoff seeding. I think all around, Houston is a well-rounded team. From defense to offense, of course, with Dell going down, there's a little bit of a concern on the weapon side on offense. But they just have pieces everywhere. The depth I really like in Houston. So I think if they match up with the Jaguars this week, given everything we know, I would give the edge to Houston. That's why I have them at number 8. Number 7, Miami Dolphins. Technically the number 1 seed in the AFC. And you can't even hate on me because I am a Dolphins fan. So this is trying to be as completely unbiased as possible. Sure, they put up a massive win. They can put up massive points when they're playing the weak teams. We got to look down here. They've played all of these teams on this board, 2 of them twice. So we got to keep that in mind when we're looking at their record, 9-3. On top of that, all of their losses are against teams that are good. Any team with a winning record, they lose to. So until we see them beat a team with a winning record, it's hard for me to move them up the board past number 7. Again, they're playing Tennessee Monday night, or another team in the bottom half of the board. Sure, they're a good record. They got a great offense, but let's see them beat some of these topper teams. Number 6, we got the Detroit Lions, and it is a team that the Dolphins will eventually play. They just haven't done it yet. Big win for Detroit over the New Orleans. We already touched on that game a little bit, how they led pretty much the whole way. The game wasn't as close as it ended up being. Detroit has Chicago this week. Talked about that, how they already matched up, so I'm not going to go too much into Detroit. They're pretty much cruising. They should win that division with ease. Number 5, Dallas. Same kind of situation, honestly, as the Dolphins, but I do think Dallas at least has shown a little bit more consistency when it comes to the topper teams. They beat the Seattle Seahawks. That's a little bit of a winning record, so they got a winning record there. They beat other teams with winning records. This week they're playing Philadelphia, a team that's coming off a big loss to San Fran, and they lost to them earlier in the season, but that game was super close, right? So Dallas continues to be that team that every year we think they're going to take a step forward. The regular season is good, but it's playoffs that matter, I think, for anyone that's a Dallas Stars fan. Dallas Cowboys fan, sorry, hockey on the mind. It's playoffs or nothing. Number 4, dropping a couple of spots. We got the Kansas City Chiefs, and they are now 3rd ranked in the AFC behind Baltimore, behind the Dolphins. We saw them lose again on a primetime game. We saw it a couple times now this year. Some of the times we're starting to get worried. I get worried with their offense. I think I've said this a couple times all throughout the power rankings this year. Their offense just seems to not be the same as it has. They struggle. They're having drops. And then this game was not the same, although you could argue this game down the stretch, the refs were really rough in that game against Green Bay. Big game against Buffalo, another team that's competitive. These guys have played some massive games in the past couple of years. It's going to be fun to watch. Buffalo coming off a bye, Kansas City coming off a tough loss. These guys are going to play a tough game. It's going to be a big impact on whether the KC can even stay up if they do it. Number 3, didn't move them. They had a bye. Could have maybe moved them. Honestly, Ravens could potentially be top in the league. Let's be honest. I talked about it a couple weeks ago how they were the best ever team that was 7-3 start. Like best ever. I went over some stats on that. But guys, the Ravens had a bye. They're having the Rams this week. Another team that's pretty competitive. And the Ravens can put the division away with a win here. Keep your eye out. I'm interested how this offense is going to roll coming out of the bye week. Number 2, finally, I think they were dethroned from the number 1 spot. And what can you say? These 2 teams actually played each other this past week. So I'm going to just put them up at the same time. I think San Francisco demonstrated that they're elite on all sides of the ball. Defensively, offensively, they seem to be getting it done. The Eagles, they struggled a little bit. We've seen that the Eagles are human, at least over the past couple of weeks. Sure, they've been continuing to win. They've been tighter and tighter wins. And San Fran finally exposed them, I guess, with a 42-19 win. Talked about it Sunday night. Eagles play the Cowboys. and San Fran plays Seattle. So both these teams having big, important division matchups. Whereas one playing a little tougher, San Fran, you would expect them to put the division away, guys. And there you have it. We talked about all 32 teams heading into week 14. Let me know what you guys think. What are your predictions? What would you change on this board? Where am I completely out to lunch? And guys, thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel. Smash that like button. All that fun stuff. We will see you for the next video.